And I'm going to jump right in because we have a long ways to go in a short period of time. So we're going to have kind of a hard shift this week because we're going to be going from talking about grief and loss to fun games. So we're going to add levity at the end there. So hang in there if it feels a little bit heavy in the beginning. So loss is common to every single one of us. Isn't that true? We've all experienced some kind of loss. It can range from losing a game last night, like if you're the Astros, so they went home last night, they felt bad, they lost their game, to the depths of losing a loved one. Many of us have lost everything from friends to family members to marriages to pets, all the things. There's financial loss. The list really could go on. And often we don't fully value things that later when they're lost, we see all the value that they had to us. Sometimes it takes experiencing that loss to feel the value. My very first experience with loss as a little girl was my parents' divorce. And I honestly didn't really feel the full impact of that loss until later. And then a loss that went along with that as I went back and forth between parents. And so my mom moved a lot, so I lost friends. It seemed like I'd make a group of friends at a school, and then I'd move. And then I'd make another group of friends, and then I'd move. And the world wasn't as connected, and I was a little girl, so there was really no way to keep up with those relationships. I've grieved the death of my birth mom to alcoholism. I've grieved the death of my stepmom, who was really my very best friend, who died very, very young through complications of diabetes. I've grieved the death of my 2 baby boys. I've grieved the death of my brother who committed suicide. I've grieved the loss of a marriage. Last year, I lost my dad during COVID. And you're probably looking at me and going, that is a sad woman, like a lot of loss. But I know all of us have an accumulation of loss as well, depending upon our age. And that may surprise you because on the surface, you may see me as a person of really great joy and laughter. And that's actually true about me. And today I want to talk about a little bit of how joy and grief can actually coexist. And I found, and I'm in your notes now and in your verses, that what David said has been so true in my life. He said this in Psalm 30, verse 5. He said, "Crying may last for a night, but joy comes in the morning." And he said in Psalm 126, 5, "Those who plant in tears will harvest with shouts of joy." And I really love these two pictures because I really believe it's the soil that's watered with tears that produces and grows, and you can underline that word, the most beautiful fruit of joy. And psychologists actually tell us that there's an intimacy in laughing together that resembles the same intimacy that we feel in crying together. So have you ever just laughed with someone so hard, like laugh till you pee kind of thing? That, there's an intimacy, there's a vulnerability in that. And they're saying, psychologists say, it's similar to the intimacy that you feel when you just ugly cry with someone and let all that out. It's that vulnerability. In fact, they say the closest distance between two people is either grief or laughter. Now, remember we said Solomon wrote the book of Proverbs, at least the bulk of it. We also said he wrote Ecclesiastes, and that's in the Old Testament. Well, it says this in chapter 3, verse 2. It says, "There's a time to cry, and there's a time to laugh, and there's a time to grieve, and a time to dance." All of those things are all going on all over the world simultaneously as we walk out our lives. And in the book of Luke, it says this, "Blessed are you who weep now, for you shall laugh." So today, we really want to focus on what it looks like and how important it really is to healthily grieve our losses, and how grief is normal, it's natural, and it's necessary for our healing and also for our joy. In fact, it says in Matthew 5:4, "Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. And research really confirms that unwisely managed grief, and Jennifer's going to talk with us a little bit about this in a minute, it can contribute to just a multitude of things that are not good. Physical and emotional disorders, loss of hope. So we really want to be wise in dealing with our grief and loss. And it's that kind of wisdom, the wisdom in doing that, that's ultimately going to lead us to hope. And that's why I created the card this week with a picture of wisdom and hope together, because I think that's part of what wisdom brings, is it brings hope, especially in this context as we walk out our life. So Jennifer's back with us today. You guys had to bring in the expert for this one. So welcome Jennifer Webster, and she's going to help us process some of this grief and loss. Where's the clapping? Hi, Jennifer.
This rainy day.
So Jennifer and I were just in a meeting this morning at 7:30, and then we came over here and got sopping wet on the way.
Pouring down rain.
I know. There's a fun sharing and that. Okay, so we're just going to jump in the deep into the pool. Jennifer, tell us about grieving and what does that actually do for us? That whole process.
So grieving is our response, our whole bodily response to loss or suffering. And I really like this definition of suffering. It says suffering can be defined as getting what you do not want while at the same time not getting what you want. And so...
Will you say it again?
Suffering can be defined as getting what you do not want while wanting what you do not get.
That's good.
And so when we have that happen, going back to the Proverbs, one of my favorite Proverbs in counseling is Proverbs 13:12, which says, "Hope deferred makes the heart sick." So suffering and loss is a heart sickness, and grieving is our reaction to that. It's just responding to the heart sickness that we have.
So how does that help us? How does grieving help us?
It helps us process it and get from the place from the grief to back to life and to hope.
Yeah, I love that full circle back to hope. So I heard this quote, and I'd love to hear your thoughts about that. It says, "Healing in grief is heart-based, not head-based." Do you agree or disagree with that?
Both. I agree. I think what they're trying to say is you can't not grieve. So if there's a loss, you will grieve it. A lot of things we can do in our head. In fact, we talked about it a couple of weeks ago when I was here, that we can take these thoughts captive and do a little bit of mind over matter on some things. You really can't on grief. Grief is going to be there waiting for you. And I had this illustration I thought of this morning. I had a college roommate that had a real heavy foot, and she would speed back to school every time she came. She got all these speeding tickets, and I think she was at that point where her dad was like, "You get one more speeding ticket and I'm taking your car away." So sure enough, she's on Highway 6 driving back to school, speeding, and she sees a police officer behind her. And she thinks, "I'm just going to turn down this country road and pretend like that's where I was going and find another way out, and he'll, I'll outsmart him." So sure enough, she turns down the road. The police officer doesn't follow her, and she's like, "Yes." And so she's driving and driving and driving, and then she realizes that there is no other way out, that she has to turn around and go back. But it's been about 15 minutes, so she goes back, and sure enough, the police officer knew the same thing, and he was just sitting there waiting for her. That's what grief does. It's going to wait for you. So you can delay it, you can deny it, you can come up with all kinds of ways to pretend it's not there, but we have to process our grief. And there's a saying that what we don't feel, we can't heal. So we really need to feel our grief.
Say that one again.
What we don't feel, we can't heal. It's like little jingles here. So
you got a
little rhymes, yeah.
But, it's interesting, Jennifer. Do you feel like, and I don't know what this looks like, but let's say a loss that I had as a girl. that I didn't fully grieve because I didn't even know what to do with it. Like
Yeah.
you don't really even know what it is. How do you see later that maybe it pops out in a different way? How do you know if you haven't fully grieved something?
I feel like what we talk about a lot in counseling is if you respond to something emotionally, like at a level 10, and intellectually it should be like a level 2, it's because something's poking a wound that you have that didn't heal in your heart. So that's one of the best ways to know is that you're like, why am I so angry all of a sudden? Or why am I just crying over that? And so a lot of times it's because you've had a wound that you just never addressed. You might not have even known you had it.
Right.
And when something pokes it, just like a physical wound, when you get poked, you like, ah! When if you didn't have that wound, you wouldn't do that. So when we respond, it's a good check for us to go, why did I respond that way? What's going on in my heart?
Then what do I do?
Then what do you do? Yeah. Then you really start exploring it. I recommend journaling. You know, think it through. You take it to God. You spend time with friends discussing things. Counseling's a great place to go when you have these long-term wounds that, you know, most of us, there was a philosophy for a lot of years that's in the past, you know, it won't affect you. But it's really not true. Our heart wounds that happen to our heart are very similar to our physical wounds. If they don't heal properly, they'll come back to bite you and hurt you. So,
yeah. I know. How many of you grew up in a family where you had that kind of family mentality of, okay, get over it? Or anybody else? Oh, look at this, Jennifer, look at this.
Yeah.
So interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, or if you're going to cry about that, you go in your room and cry about it, come out when you're done. You know, so that's, yeah.
Or I'll give you something to cry
or
about.
I'll give you something to cry about. Yeah, that line. Yeah, the hands are going up. So that's the family I grew up in. In fact, I didn't go to my first funeral. I was 22 years old. Like we weren't even allowed to see anything that was sad. Like we really
just a denial.
It was just a full like, no, nothing bad's going on here. So we're just living our best life ever. You know, nothing's happening in the world. Yeah, but we did have the news on. So strange about that. All right. So I've heard the phrase that grief is circular, not linear. I've also heard the phrase that grief is like a ping pong ball,
Yeah.
or a pinball machine, something like that.
Yeah.
So explain that.
Well, there's a very famous study by Elizabeth Kubler-Ross who studied cancer patients that had just been told that they were not going to survive. And she came up with these stages of grief. And for a lot of years, people believed that you systematically went through these stages. And now, I mean, if any of you, we've all grieved, you know that it isn't a stage. It's much more like a roller coaster with the spins and the ups and the downs. And you feel like you're making progress, and then all of a sudden you're right back to, I can't believe this happened. So, yeah, it's definitely much more circular. I think what happens is the intensity lessens, the duration of your pain gets shorter. But it isn't predictable.
Yeah, I always say it's capricious. It's like the weather. You know, like you're doing great. You think you're doing great with your grief, and then you get in the elevator, and when an elevator song comes on, and then it reminds you of your dad, and it's like, it comes and like grabs you from behind the neck, and all of a sudden you're staying in the elevator crying, going, oh, I'm a hot mess, and I was doing fine, and I just got in the elevator, and why do they play this music anyway? Yeah,
so you nailed it. That's what it feels like.
That's my example of that. So how do you re-enter? Like you said, you know, it becomes less and less, but how do you re-enter the world? I can remember after some of my losses, like going to a restaurant was weird. So you go in and like, oh, how dare all these people be having such a great time in here? Don't you know, I just lost my brother. You know, it's challenging re-entering the world, and yet I know you don't want us to be isolated.
Right.
So.
It does change your identity. I think the first thing I'd say is just to be self-compassionate. Talk to yourself the way you would talk to your best friend that was grieving. So, for example, you wouldn't say to your best friend, oh my gosh, are you crying again? Like, when are you going to get over this? I thought you were stronger. This is ridiculous. But we talk to ourselves that way. So first off, just allow yourself the time to grieve. People always want to know, how long does it take to grieve? It takes as long as it takes. You know, I mean, it's going to be different for every person. But the more active you are, the more you don't deny what you're feeling, the better off you'll be. So be self-compassionate, first of all. I'd say to move slowly. Grief is your timeline. It's not someone else's. You can have the same loss. Like you lost your brother, and a different family member may grieve longer or faster, or, you know, so share your grief. Don't compare your grief. Here's another cute saying. Share your grief. Don't compare your grief. So, yeah, we aren't designed to be isolated in grief, and we want to, because it can just, you know, throw you to the bed, throw you to your knees. But yeah, find some people that you trust, that you can share it with. Grief Share, fabulous. You know, it's offered all over the country. Get involved in that. Listen to other people. Share yours. But I mean, what the goal is you really want to feel those feelings. And I think we are so quick to deny our feelings. So accept that you have them, accept the grief, and actually feel it. One of my favorites is to have a good cry regularly. I find that people either can cry real easily or it's very difficult for them to cry. But crying is so therapeutic. It is a release of the tension. There's all kinds of chemicals that come out. So a lot of people, if you have a loss and you have to get back to work quickly, then schedule time to just cry. Say, you know, Saturday morning, I'm not going to get out of bed before noon. I'm going to lay there and cry. If it's difficult for you to cry, force it. I know that sounds crazy.
You mean like with onions?
No, yeah, but you could do onions. So my youngest daughter was the high school class of 2020. So she went on spring break and then found out she was not going to have the rest of her senior year. So something I've done my adult life with my girls and my friends is we go on a cry drive. And a cry drive is where you don't get to be the griever and drive. So you have to have someone else drive. But we go through Sonic, we get a drink, and we listen to every sad song you can think of. And she just sat there and cried and grieved the loss of, you know, losing her senior year. And I've taken my mother, who lost my father, on cry drives. You just cry. You don't have to have any words. You don't have to say anything. But you just really allow yourself to feel those feelings. And it's very rare that you do it and you don't feel better.
My stepmom used to cry in the shower.
Yeah, that's a good place
I
too, because you
learned that
want a
from
safe
her.
place.
Yeah,
Yes.
because I remember one time she was in the shower and I could hear in the other room, also I heard this, and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, what is happening? And I realized that was her, it wasn't
Yeah.
a car, it was
Yeah.
the shower for
I
her.
like to cry in the bathtub. Yeah.
Do you?
Or the car. Mhm.
Are the pillows good too? Like this, you can really get up in the pillow.
Yeah,
and
that is
muffle
good.
it, yeah.
That is good. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
we're a mess.
Yeah, yeah. But, you know, sometimes people will say, I feel like if I start crying, I'll never stop. You know, just because you don't feel the emotion, that's the funny thing about our emotions. The more we release them, the less power they have. The more we stuff them, the more they have a hold of us. So, you know, when you have a safe time, let it out, cry.
That's good.
Then you're less likely to cry in, you know, the middle of Walmart because you've been letting it out, allowing yourself to do that.
Has anyone ever avoided someone in the grocery store who they knew has had a significant loss because you didn't want to talk to them because you had no clue what you were going to say or what to say, or you didn't want to upset them, but then you wanted to be helpful, but you didn't know what to do? I'm the only one in the group that does that. Okay. So anyway, how do we help our friends through a loss? Because sometimes it's awkward. You don't know what to do. You want to love them well, and you don't know what the best thing is. And there's a huge range of loss. I mean,
There
could have,
is, absolutely.
yeah, huge, wide range.
So, first of all, it is going to be awkward. You know, death is awkward, loss is awkward, divorce is awkward, infidelity is awkward, COVID is awkward. So acknowledge that and just say, I might not do this right, but I want to show up. That's always been a motto of our church, show up. I advise taking an action step. A lot of times we say, what can I do for you? Well, somebody grieving is just struggling to breathe. So instead say, I'm going to drop a meal off. Can I pick your kids up? Can I mow the yard? Can I, whatever it may be, just look for the action items and do it. I think small cards, gifts, all of those things are wonderful. Drop a plant by. Just let people know that you're thinking about them. When I went through my divorce, I remember people would send me cards, which meant the world to me. I did not even have the energy to open them, but they would sit there, and I would think, oh, they cared about me. And I just remember thinking that it was awesome to get that mail. So things like that let people know that you care and that you're there.
I love a text, like just a simple text that says, I prayed for you today.
Yeah.
That's like, oh, somebody prayed for me today.
Absolutely.
That's all it has to say.
I love that. Absolutely. Yeah, I think we look for all the right words and want to say things and want to be so, cheerleading for them. And that's really what people need, is just that you sit with them in their pain. You don't need to have the right words.
And we were talking earlier, it doesn't have to be like a physical death. It could
No, and we were talking about this. So one of the things I see in counseling a lot, and I've experienced a lot, is when someone's going through a different trauma or suffering or pain or loss than death, we kind of have a pretty good formula on death. Let's take them meals, let's do flowers, let's be there for them. But there's all kinds of, divorce is so traumatic. Infidelity, so traumatic. And I think people just have to suffer with those in isolation. So I encourage you at your tables, and if you know friends that are going through hard times in their marriage, show up for that. You don't need to know the answers. You don't need to know what's going on, but you can still make a meal. You can still drop off a potted plant. You can still say, I'm praying for you. So those losses are just as real. And so I encourage you. Things I encourage you not to do, and I'll end on that. Yeah, this is a big one. The statement, at least. Get that out of our...
At least.
At least. At least you have other children. At least you were married. At least, we don't want any at least. So when you feel the urge to say, at least, you took that nice vacation, it's not going to go well. So
it's like we're trying to make
ourselves
feel better and them feel better, and instead it's like you just made that worse.
Yeah.
It's rough too, isn't it? Sorry to interrupt you, but in a small group, I've seen this happen a lot, where people start sharing in a small group, and then everyone comes along and starts trying to fix it and make it better. Or, don't cry, it's all going to be fine. And it's like, well, right now it's really so not fine.
Right.
So I think there's this whole thing of letting people stay in their pain.
Absolutely.
Is so healthy, because it's that soil that's watered in that'll bring the joy later. So I think a good gift of loving people well is to let people stay in their pain and besides your own self staying in your pain.
Yeah. And it is awkward for the other person, and we feel this need to offer something. But really the best thing is to just, if you can, just sit in silence, or phrases like, that's really hard.
Yeah, I like that
That's
phrase.
really hard.
What were some other things to not say?
To not do. Also, don't make promises. It's going to be better, I promise. It might not be better. Your cancer might overtake you. They might not get well. So we don't need to be that cheerleader. We want to be that cheerleader. There are promises, but really what people want is just to know that they're heard and that it is okay. So another thing, no judgment. People get super angry when they're grieving, and they can say all kinds of wild things, and it's not the time to do the course correction or judge them or say, well, you're probably going to get struck down. Because we see that in the Psalms. God is quite clear. He can handle our anger. True. He can handle it. We don't have to run interference for our friends that are in pain. And lastly, I think I would say when we're grieving, it can be really isolating. So you might just ask someone, can I give you a hug? physical touch can be one of the first things people lose during that time. And so just reach out and say, would it be okay if I give you a hug? But I think the main thing is to show up. And if you say the wrong thing, just say, hey, I'm really sorry.
Yeah.
You know, this is hard for me. I had a friend that had another friend that would come over all the time, did all the showing up, but just couldn't live in the pain with her. And so was always wanting to give, you know, tomorrow's going to be better and God's going to work this all out. And she finally told her, you know, the most loving thing you could do is just not say all that to me. And so sometimes if you are the griever, you know, let people know, I want your company. But I think the other thing is the unpredictableness of grief. And I wanted to say that back when you said re-entering the world. Mm-hmm. When you are re-entering the world, I would make sure that you always have a back door for yourself. So what that means is when you finally feel like going to somebody's Super Bowl party, make sure that you let them know ahead of time, I might just stay for a quarter. Mm-hmm. You know, drive yourself, that sort of thing, because grief is very unpredictable. So what sounds like a fabulous idea 1 minute, you know, might all of a sudden be like, why in the world did I say I would go to this, you know? So
it's maybe a good choice because you're trying to get out there and get
Right.
back out. But you give yourself permission to go, oh, wow, I have got to go right now. Because something could trigger you in the middle
absolutely,
of it.
absolutely.
Yeah, I was somewhere, my dad's death is a year ago, and I was somewhere a week ago, and this little kid's tune, it's like, I'm not going to sing it because people will leave now, but it's that song about the down at the station early in the morning, see the little puffer bellies all in a row.
I forgot that one.
Master, blow the little hand, chug, chug. Anyway, that song came on where I was, and my dad used to sing that to me and then sang it to my grandkids, and I was like, I was a hot mess over that after a year. It just was one of those things that I had no clue that song, clearly music triggers me on things.
Yes.
Clearly.
Yes.
So, yeah, I think that's
I think
true for all
most
of us.
people for music. So
That can
yeah.
go that way.
So I think overwhelmingly is if you're grieving, be compassionate to yourself.
Okay.
If your friends are grieving, be compassionate and show up for them.
I love that. Thank you so much. Hey, y'all give Jennifer a hand. And you have a lot of great discussion questions for you in your group today. There is a handout on your table, and it's about two things. One is a grief share group called Surviving the Holidays. And Jennifer, I know holidays like...
Oh, yes. I recommend this. Recommend it for anyone going through anything. Being proactive with holidays is just the smartest
important,
thing.
right?
Yeah.
Holidays can be that. And then in January, our regular grief share group is going to start. So feel free, if this isn't for you, take this for someone you care about, for a friend or a family member that's maybe going through a loss right now. So, all right, love you guys. Let me pray, and then we'll go into your groups. God, thank you that we can right now, corporately and individually, take our open hands and offer our loss up to you, our grief. Things that maybe even this morning we didn't realize we were still grieving. And I thank you for all these promises in your word, that you're the God of comfort, you're the God of hope, you're the God of restoration, that you never leave us or forsake us, that you're right by our side. And so we remember those things today, and guide us in our conversation that we could love and support each other well. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
Well, we were thinking about our bonus edits and different things that we could offer as a bonus edit. All of a sudden, one day I went, oh my goodness, I know such a fun bonus edit, and I know the perfect person to do it. So we decided a game edit would be really great coming into the holidays. So I want to introduce you to my friend Melissa Gordon. She's also the director of all of our small groups on this campus and interfaces with the other campuses as well, making sure that we provide just awesome groups for people to participate in. And she's a full-on total gamer, you guys. Like, look at, and did I say competitive? I don't know if I mentioned that. Anyway, it's true about her. Y'all welcome my friend Melissa Gordon.
Yeah. Well, hey everyone. Yes, Kat and Tanya know around my family, games are huge. So are any of you do you love games? How many? Oh, we have lots. Yay, you guys are my friends. So we are big on competing in our family. In fact, I think we have this saying that when we play games, we don't love each other. You guys feel like that? It's all about you, right? In that moment, you want to win. And so, yeah, that whole love is patient, love is kind. You should not boast. Yeah, we're all about winning. So I know on your tables you have a handout. This is not the end-all, be-all list of games. There are so many out there, but I'm hoping that today I get to introduce you guys maybe to some games that you've never played before. So holidays are coming, and games are a great way to do kind of two things. Either liven up the party, right? So if your family's there, they're sitting around, maybe they're watching TV, and you're like, come on, guys, we're here together. Let's go hang out. Games are a great way for that. Or if you have that family member that just likes to talk a lot, and you really just kind of want to sway them into sitting down and playing a game. So anyway, this could be a fun thing. So I thought I'd go over 5. The first one is called Saboteur. Anybody in here familiar with Saboteur? I love this. So see, there's so many games out there. So I get to share with y'all maybe something new that you haven't experienced before. So Saboteur is a card strategy game. It's miners and it's saboteurs, and everybody's going after the gold. And the one fun thing about this is if you are a saboteur, nobody knows that you're there to sabotage the miners from getting the gold, right? So you're looking for explosion cards on this little minefield that they're on, or maybe you're looking to turn around the road so that they don't get to the gold, or maybe you know where the gold is and you're building a nice pathway with all those miners. We're going here, and then all of a sudden you change the pathway. So the crazy thing about being a saboteur, it depends on when you decide to play that turn card or that blow up road card, right? Because then now you're a suspect and everybody's looking at you. But the good news is, as a saboteur, you won't be the only one in that game. So you really got to kind of look and see who else around that table might be on your path and with you. So this is really best played with 6 to 10 people, and it's under $10. So it's an easy game that you can purchase and you can play with a family. I recommend the more people, the better for this game. All right, so the next card game is called 5 Crowns. Have you guys heard of that? So Patrick and Lisa love to play this game, and so do Tanya and Kent. They love to play a 2-player card game. This can be played in solitaire mode, so if you just want to get the cards out and start playing, you can do that. If you want to play as a 2-player, it's a great game for that. It's also good all the way up to 7, and kids love it. So in this game, it's all about wild cards. You start with 3 cards in your hand, and then in those 3 cards, one of those cards is a wild, and you go 3, 4, 5, 6, all the way up to 11 rounds. And each round, there's a wild card. And the strategy is game isn't over until the king are wild. So you're trying to lay down the cards that are in your hand, and the person at the end of the 11 rounds that has few cards left wins. So that's how that game is. And it's under $11, which is awesome. The next one is Ticket to Ride. This is a little bit more of a familiar game. Do you guys know what this one is? Ticket to Ride? Man, I love this. I really get to show you guys some things. All right, so Ticket to Ride is fun because who doesn't love trains? If you have kids, kids love to touch things that are there in front of them, right? So it's real trains. There's trains of all colors, and just this past year, they came out with pink trains for breast cancer awareness. I thought that was really cool. This game, there's never a dull moment because they have lots of expansions. So you can play Ticket to Ride to Europe, to India, to Japan, to USA 1910. And the great thing with kids is that on the map, it's actually real cities that are in Europe or real cities that are in Japan. And so it's a little bit of a cross-country learning experience, and it's a lot of fun. I really recommend playing this game with 2 to 5 players. It's a little bit more expensive, and it takes a little bit of time to play, about 60 minutes. But they also have something called Ticket to Ride First Journey, which is for ages 6+. So it's a great game for kids. It is a little bit of a lengthy read on instructions. So if you have that family member that loves to read rules, then there you go. You want them to read all about those rules. Okay, the next one is a board game called Codenames. Codenames is a fun one-word clue game. So this you want to partner with 2 or 4 players is when it's best played, and you can do this 2 ways. You either partner with somebody that thinks like you and knows you, you're guaranteed to win, or you play with somebody that doesn't know you at all, and it's a lot of fun because you're trying to figure out what in the world do they want you to guess. So somebody will say it's like a 5x5 grid of a bunch of different cards in front of you. The person sitting across from you, and you may say to them, okay, sports 5. And that means there's 5 of these cards in front of them that are related to sports, but you're the one that decided which 5 they are, and they have no clue. And so if you really know that person well, you're like, okay, I'm looking for, like, if it's basketball, I'm looking for a ball. You know, I'm looking for a goal. Or this person that I played with did not think like me at all, and they put pants on there as part of the 5. And I'm like, sports and pants? I don't understand. And he's like, basketball, yo. When basketball, when they come in, they have the pants on, right? They take the pants off. I'm like, that does not even relate. We're totally losing right now. So it just depends on who you play with. It's 15 to 20 minutes. It's a very short game. And kids, with this one, y'all, you really get to see how they think, right? Because you're trying to figure, they're giving you a one-word clue, and it's a lot of fun to play with kids. So, okay, almost there. Last game. This is a dice game. It's called Liar's Bluff. Have you guys played Liar's Dice before? In any kind of different way? This one's Perudo. You don't have to play Perudo. You can play any version of Liar's Dice, but what I love about this one in particular is it's got a little bit of a South America swing to it, so it's got some culture base in there, which I think is a lot of fun to learn. This one is best played with 2+, and I recommend this for big families, so much so that you can just buy more cups and more dice for as many people that you have there. I don't recommend this game if you have babies that are sleeping. It's a very loud game. You're putting the dice in the cups and you're shaking them constantly, so it's super, super loud. You have to have a poker face to win this game, so if you don't have a poker face, don't try and play. I'm just gonna say that right now. Because as soon as somebody calls your bluff, you can't even move past the next person, you're already losing your dice. And you gotta have a dice in order to win at the end of the game. So this is kind of it. If you guys have any questions about this, I'd love to chat more. I'd love to know what your favorite game is to play over the holidays. I am a total gamer, so just come find me in the back.